One of the best things about Hawaii is we don't have any snakes. I'm going to tell you why coming up next. Hey, what's happening, friends? So I get asked all the time, how come there are no snakes in Hawaii? And that's one of the best parts about being in Hawaii is we don't have poisonous snakes or any type of snake if you're not if you're not into hanging out with snakes. But it's a thing that the state puts a lot of effort into making sure that we maintain our ability to keep snakes out of the state, because primarily the biggest example of this being a problem is in Guam. So in Guam, they had the brown tree snake take root in Guam from being imported. It was not a natural reptile in the islands, and it has decimated the bird population there because the snakes have no natural predators. And so Hawaii is in a very similar boat where we don't have any natural predators for snakes. And so if snakes took a foothold here and became established, it would be a huge environmental problem for our animals and especially the bird population. And so that is a thing that the state takes a lot of puts a lot of focus on, and makes sure that we don't have snakes that are imported into the islands. And definitely there's a lot of inspection processes that happen when cargo comes in. There are dogs that will inspect cargo, whether it's from the consumer side or the military side, when they're coming from places where there are snakes. So the state is very focused on this and has been for a very long time, because they understand that the consequences of having snakes in Hawaii would be just devastating to our natural environment. And so if you look at the State Department of Agriculture's website, it's very clear how seriously they take this. So if you are caught with a snake and it's not in the zoo, or you don't have a specific permit for it, there's a very stringent process to get a permit for it. You can be fined up to $200,000. You can be in prison for not more than 3 years, and you will be responsible for paying all the costs of capture or eradication of the pest. And so not just snakes, this is really applicable to all invasive species. But we've seen over the decades here recently, there's a lot of problems with invasive species in the islands. Primarily, one that people are very familiar with are mongoose. Mongoose were brought in to combat rats back in the sugarcane days. And the ironic thing about that was that mongoose come out during the day and rats come out at night. So they just brought in, rats were the first invasive species, and to combat the rats, they brought in mongoose, and then it ended up they don't interact with each other. So they didn't solve the problem. It just created two problems, and now we have rats and mongoose, which are also two things that do threaten the native bird populations here in the state. And then another invasive species that was established probably like 25-30 years ago is coqui frogs, and that's something that a lot of people are aware of, and actually does affect real estate desirability sometimes. When coqui frogs are prevalent, they're very loud little frogs, or tiny little frogs from Puerto Rico that people suspect came in with nursery plants from the big box stores like Walmart or Home Depot. When they bring those plants in, they found their way in on those plants, and so they established themselves and prolificated, or whatever the word is, to a huge extent. And so in some of the more lush areas at night, you hear all of the sounds of coqui frogs, which some people think sound nice. They sound like chirping birds or crickets, and some people are very annoyed by them. So we have a big focus on invasive species because we've learned our lesson over the years, and snakes would definitely be a huge contributing factor to that problem. And so there is a huge focus. And for me, who's squirmy about snakes, I'm definitely glad that we do not have them in the state. But to give you some background on why there are no snakes, it's because there never was any. They never made it here naturally, and the only way they would make it here is to be introduced, and the state takes it very seriously to keep that from becoming an issue, or keeping snakes from making it to the islands and becoming established. So one of the best things about Hawaii is no snakes. You can go walking through the grass and walking through the jungle and not have any concern about poisonous snakes biting you or anything weird like that happening. So if you have any questions about this or anything else related to invasive species, you can always ask. I'm not an expert, but I'm pretty familiar with the history of it and the politics of invasive species over the years. But just be a responsible citizen. If you like snakes, do not bring them to Hawaii. Do not smuggle them in. I don't know why you'd want a snake as a pet, but if you do, this is not the place for it. So please take that into account before you come to Hawaii or make the move here, is we are not a snake-friendly state. So as always, if you have any questions, you can put them in the comments below, or email me at dylan@buybigisland.com, and I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next week.